everybody. My name is Bridget, and I am an alcoholic.
Hi, Bridget.
And it gives me great joy to be able to introduce our speaker tonight. I've known Jeri for the last 4 years. I've been privileged to be her sponsor for those 4 years. And, you know, when Jeri first and I met, we met in Early Birds, which is both our home groups. And for the first 6 months, maybe she cried her eyes out. I didn't think she'd ever stop crying. Long enough to be able to start talking. But she was in desperate need, like so many of us, of this program. And her heart was broken, but her willingness and her spunk, she's like a little firecracker. She, you know, she's no saint, and she has a mind of her own. But what she does is love this program, and she loves the people in it. And I've seen her help many women, and she's helped me included. So Jeri, get up here and tell us what it was like, what happened, and what it's like. Sit down. Okay.
Hi guys.
Hi, Jeri.
My name is Jeri and I am an alcoholic.
Jeri.
Woke up sober this morning.
What a-
Hell of a deal. I love AA and I had taste of it here and there in prior years. But this time was very different, and I'll get to that in my story. But it changed my life forever, and it was because I had a sponsor that helped me feel comfortable enough to be honest and to be genuinely honest about things. And because of that, it started me on a whole new belief system of honesty. And, you know, telling white lies and whatnot, you know, just didn't bother me. Now, if I have opportunity to lie about something or need to for some reason, I feel terribly guilty, and I usually opt not to do it and find another way around it because I just don't like being dishonest. Well, let's see. I can tell you that from a little girl, I would envision what I thought was the perfect family: the nice house, a good car, a mom that did things with me. You see, I had friends that had moms that did a lot of stuff with them and were very involved, and their dads worked steady, and they had nice homes, and there was, it didn't seem to me as a little girl that there was chaos like there was at our house. My dad was a painter contract, and my mom was cleaned homes, it was a business, and we were constantly moving all over the place. Kind of in the same neighborhood, just different houses. So I kind of stayed in the same school growing up in elementary school. But, you know, there were nights when we'd leave in the middle of the night and have to go to our next place. And I can remember thinking that, you know, am I ever going to have a home, like, you know, nice home that had things that you need in it, and nice furniture, you know. It's like we lived very poorly. Dad did as much work as he could. He was an excellent painter contractor, and but he had his own demons too. He was a gambler and an alcoholic at the time, and he would just take off for days and blow all our money, and sometimes gamble away homes and cars and everything else. And so it was pretty chaotic growing up. I always felt poor. My mom didn't help dress me or groom me. She gave me hand-me-down, dark sale clothes, all that kind of stuff, and she dressed very well. She would go out shopping for herself, but I never got to do that with her or get new clothes. And so I always felt out of place and taunted by the kids. Both my parents loved me, and they told me that all the time, but for some reason I became invisible. And I was, you know, and I was a good girl. I strove for perfection from an early age. Just a toddler. I can remember, you know, about 4 or 5 years old, thinking that if I did things perfect, the chaos would go away, that like it was my fault. And it never did. It never did. It just kept getting worse and worse. And I was becoming more and more invisible. And I loved going to school. And I loved going to school because it got me out of the house. And it got me to the teachers. I loved my teachers. They treated me very well. And I was a high achiever. So the teachers really enjoyed that I was participating good, solid in their classes. And so I became friends, more or less, with the teachers than I did my own peers because, you know, kids are awful. They're just awful. And I was very overweight, had these big, thick glasses on. I had stringy hair and dressed pitifully. And the kids made fun of me for that. And growing up, my name was Tardy. I didn't know I wasn't named Tardy until I turned 15. So my whole life, report cards, everything was under Tardy. And Tardy rhymes with a lot of stuff that those kids could put together. And it was awful. It scarred me, and I still remember the chant to this day, and that's like 50 years ago, that I used to get on the playground. So I really started feeling isolated and not worthy because of the kids. And I felt like I didn't belong, and they would never accept me into their groups or anything like that. And I just went with that feeling all the way through elementary school. I did pick up a couple of friends during elementary school that were in my neighborhood, and finally started having a few friends, little friends, in elementary school, which I thought was really great. And they were also outcasts. The two little girls that I ran around with were outcasts too. Nobody liked them either. So we had our own little group. In 5th grade, I was introduced to band, and I really, really liked it. I really liked it. It gave me a lot of solitude when I was at home practicing, and I was getting better, and I was moving up in chairs and doing all kinds of things that were positive, and I felt really good about myself. But my parents I thought my dad being a musician would have, loved that and would have done more with me and guided me more in that direction. But they just let me do whatever I was doing as long as I wasn't causing trouble, and I never did. I didn't get in trouble. I did good grades. I stayed out of the way of the bad kids and everything else because I didn't want to disappoint my parents. They weren't around, but I didn't want to disappoint them. I thought that, like I said, I thought my parents would have been proud of me for getting in band, and my dad did show a little bit of participation with it for a while until he went on to his next adventure. They kept being taken away by affairs, by meeting other people and stuff, and eventually my dad found a woman, and she was quite a bit younger, and he left my mom for her, and they had a son. Well, that devastated my mom because they had 3 girls, and they always wanted to have a son. And so my dad was extremely happy that he was getting a son, but my mom was devastated. And that's when her drinking began to take on. They'd always drank and stuff, but my mom didn't really get drunk when I was younger. But now that I'm 10 or 11, and she's going through this horrible experience with her husband, she started drinking. Drunk. And she was a sloppy drunk. And I remember thinking early on that I will never drink because I never wanted to be like her. And I didn't for a very long time. I also noticed that I had issues with weight because I was the biggest kid in school all the time, every grade. And about in 7th and 8th grade, I watched a movie called The Best Little Girl in the World, and boy, did I relate to that. I mean, to the T. It was like my story. And she had an eating disorder. And I thought, well, maybe that will get me some attention. And maybe I'll lose some weight. And maybe they'll love me. So that started going on, and Mom stayed busy partying and getting involved with an old friend who was known as the town drunk. So that was a lot of fun to introduce, the man that everybody called the town drunk. He was a good man, but he was a horrible alcoholic. My mom decided she wanted to make a geographical change and go with him to Lubbock. And my dad at the same time wanted to go away with his wife and her kids and his new son to another place as well. And I was doing so well at that point in time in school. I finally made a lot of friends. I was, first chair in band. I was doing well in choir. I was doing great in school, and I didn't want to leave. And so I talked to them and told them I'm not leaving. And they were like, okay. My mom had a man that she dealt with for many, many, many years named Mr. Stacy, and he had properties all over town. And he was so gracious to give me the little home, like almost apartment-sized home to live in. And I did that until, what I was doing was I was working babysitting jobs, cleaning houses, anything I could do. I was underage, so I couldn't quite get hired yet. But I was doing anything I could do to make money. And so my last night in Roswell, as tardy, I took off and went to Midland to try and stay with my dad and his family. So I get to Lubbock the next day, and I found a job immediately, and it was just behind the alley, so I just had to walk across the alley. It was very convenient. Started working there, worked up enough there to get money enough to buy a car. By this time, my dad and his wife and them were starting to have issues in the marriage, and lots of fighting, and I was being put in the middle of it because I was my dad's daughter. So I was the bad guy too. And that caused a big rift between me and my stepmom for a little while. But I also understood where she was coming from, because my dad was being horrible. He was just being horrible. Anyway, my dad and I ended up getting a place out in Midland that had no running water. Well, it had running water, but no hot water. It didn't have a kitchen, didn't have a refrigerator. Had to heat water up on a gas heater, or the old-fashioned kind with the little frogs and everything in it, just to take bath. And lived out of an ice chest. And my dad left. He would just leave and then not come back for months at a time. I couldn't live like that anymore. And so I decided to go and stay with my sister in San Antonio area. It's called Great Forest. And I went to go stay with her there, and it became very clear to me very quickly that it was an unsafe area. My sister was an alcoholic and a drug addict, and she was practicing at the time. And with all the chaos and all the fear and all the stuff that was going on, there was one night that she got crazy with a gun and almost shot me and my little niece as we were running up the stairs to get away from her. I decided that night that was not where I was going to live, and had saved enough money and got a plane ticket to come back home. So I ran away because my sister wouldn't take me, so I just ran away, got on the plane. After some chaos there, I got to go home, and when I got off the plane, Mom didn't recognize me because I had totally changed my name, and then I changed my look, and I no longer had the big thick glasses. I had contacts now, and I had thinned down so much. My hair had grown long, and she was just looking for me. I could see her looking for me. She didn't even recognize me. And I get to her, and of course we hug, and she's really happy to see me. And, I'm thinking, well, maybe this was gonna be okay. I lived with her for 2 weeks. It was not okay. After that, I decided to live with a friend, a girlfriend of mine that I met at work, and I moved in together. And I was going to school, working, because by now I'm working in a restaurant, I'm waiting tables, and I'd get up extremely early in the morning, go to early classes, because I had AP classes, so they're all early in the morning, and then I would leave at noon and go to work until that night, and then go home, do homework, and all that stuff, and then get up and do it again. But I was becoming weary. Enters the drug speed. I was introduced to speed by the little white crosses, the black mollies, the little pills that everybody was taking, truck drivers took them and everything else. And I noticed right away that I wasn't dead tired all the time. I could do all those things and still feel awake and not be so dog tired. And that eventually led to methamphetamine. The people that I was around, introduced it to me, and I thought it was a miraculous drug because I could get everything done. I didn't want to eat, which I already had this eating thing going on because I didn't want to eat, and because I didn't want to gain weight, I wanted to be fit, and I went ahead and got involved in that, and that went on for quite some time. Until I was living with Vicki, and we had moved into another apartment, and she had found me a good job, not just a waiting tables job, it was an office job. And so she had set up this interview with me, and before that happened, a gentleman came that she had been hanging out with, and I thought he was coming over to see her, and he actually said that he came to see if I wanted to go to lunch with him and take a ride on his motorcycle. And I said, well, sure, but I have this interview. So I went to the interview, did really well, got the job, and then I stopped by his place at work to tell him I was sorry that I was unable to go with him. And he was so impressed with that he asked me out again. And I eventually married this man. I was still in high school, but I was now a junior, and still involved in all the musical stuff. I was, and I had dropped out of band because I was really focusing in on choir at the time. There was a special group that they put together, and I did get to participate in that, which I thought was really great. I'm starting to be a part of something, the stuff that I always wanted to be a part of, And I did that for a year, and then my senior year, my senior year, I was working full time, going to school full time, and I had met my soon-to-be husband. It's funny, my husband now's father was instrumental in getting me out of high school early because I had finished all my requirements. There was only one class that I had to take, and it could be taken at home. And he knew that I was working full time, and he knew my secret the whole time I was in high school and never told anybody because I was so afraid and stayed under the radar as much as possible because I didn't want to go into foster care because I had been so young living on my own, and that's where I would have ended up. So that didn't happen, thank God. But I did get out of school early, and this man that I married, his name was Rick, was 11 years older than I was, and he was really smart, and he really cared for me, and he did tell me, if you are going to be involved in that speed of those drugs or whatever, I won't have anything to do with it or you. So I stopped doing all that, and we had a pretty good life. No big issues. It's been so long ago, I was in high school back then, so I don't remember a lot of details about it. We were married about 4 years, and I noticed that it was time for me to excel and figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And so I was thinking about going to school or something, and he was having no part of that. So at the gym that I worked at, I was an aerobic instructor and a fitness instructor, and so I would teach these police officers and state troopers. I'd get them ready for their runs and their workout stuff that they had to do to pass their test, and started getting involved in law enforcement. I was working with Crime Stoppers, working with 2 detectives, you know, learning the business and everything else and hanging out. And I decided that that's what I wanted to do. So I applied to the State Troopers Academy and I got accepted. But I got to thinking before it was coming up, like, you know, in a couple of weeks, and I got to thinking about things. You know, here I was, 5 foot tall, big mouth, and there's a lot of desert in New Mexico. And being a state trooper, I just had this feeling that I'd end up buried somewhere out there, and it scared me. And so I went to a counselor, and just a career counselor, and we got to looking at my profile and everything. He says, yeah, well, you are very leaning towards law enforcement, but you also have medical in your profile. Have you ever thought about medical? And I said, well, I don't have money to be a doctor, you know, or have any idea what that would mean. And he said, well, how about nursing? And I said, nursing? And he goes, yeah, they make good money. You'll always have a job, and it's a very respectable career. So I said, okay, let's look into that. So I looked into it. My grades were so good in high school that went well, and they had a long wait, a very long wait to get into nursing school. But my dad played poker with the dean of the college and his dad. So he saw my name, I think my dad might have talked to him, and he saw my grades, and he got me in right away. So I started nursing school and had to do all my prerequisites plus nursing school. So again, I was like so busy, and then working all these little odd jobs, lifeguarding, you know, babysitting again, and then eventually what I did was I got into bartending and cocktail waitressing, and that was hard because it was late at night, and I wasn't dating. I didn't have any men involved. I had plenty of men that would ask me out, but I was so involved in school and it was so priority to me that I didn't have time to be in a relationship. So I just went to school. I remember it being a really fun time, just going to college and learning and becoming a nurse, and then the camaraderie between nurses was kind of like, you know, AA camaraderie. It was really great. And I divorced my first husband, and then years later, after I was fixing to graduate from college, I met Billy. And Billy was younger than I am, so I thought, well, I tried older, maybe younger will work. And it was still, you know, early 20s. We got married, and then we ended up getting pregnant, which was on purpose. We were trying to have a baby. And things were going real well up until about 3 or 4 months into it. Billy became physically abusive. I don't know if it was the pregnancy that brought it on or what, or just the stress of it all, but he was beating the tar out of me a lot. And I didn't know what to do. And you know, I look at battered women these days, and I have such empathy for them, because you get put in your mind so many things when you're abused. You know, you lose your identity. So it was a really, really tough time. So we made a geographical change, hoping that the abuse would stop if we moved somewhere where his friends weren't around, and he started. So we moved to San Antonio to be near his parents and his stepfather. And again, life got really good. The abuse stopped. We bought a business, and we had our beautiful son. We were a good-looking couple. People liked being around us and everything, and things were going along beautifully until they weren't. All of a sudden, it just came back. It came back with a vengeance. I don't know if it was the stress of the business and all that was going on, I don't know what it was. We've never gotten down to details. We have made our amends to each other, but we never got down to details about what he was feeling or why he was feeling that way. At that point, by the time that I did my amends with him, we had been divorced for many, many years, and I knew that it wasn't important anymore, that I knew why he did it, because it wasn't gonna change anything. So I just let it go, So we were married for a while, and the abuse came back, and this time the abuse was very physical, and it was very, very harmful. And the last time the one time that I stood up for myself was when I got my butt kicked really bad, and I ran to the neighbors, and I got on the phone, and I called the police. And the police came, and he took off. He took off to New Mexico somewhere. And they were saying, well, we don't see any bruises on you, because they just got there, it just happened, and didn't want to do anything about it. Which today's world, we know that would have been a whole different story. So he disappeared and didn't come back for months and months. But at that time, I was working as a nurse in a transplant unit and doing really well in my job and my career. And I met a gentleman there that was going through hardship with his marriage. And we all worked together, so you get real close to your peers when you work together for a long time. And we became really close friends, really, really close friends. And I decided to get divorced because I had to. I was saving myself and my son from what could possibly keep getting worse and worse. And this gentleman, Kermit, came into my life, and we decided that he knew I didn't love him like he wasn't my soulmate love. He knew I loved him as a friend, but he knew that I didn't feel the way about him as he felt about me. But he still wanted to marry me. He said, "It doesn't matter. I'll love you for the both of us." And in order for me to get away from Billy and him quit pulling me back in and bringing me back or threatening and doing all this other stuff, I married Kermit. And he was a great stepdad. He was really good with my son. He was really just a sweet, sweet man who just was a hardcore alcoholic. And that probably is when I started drinking. It was when I was married to him. Not a whole lot, but I started drinking because I had never drank before. And I kind of liked the way that it made me relax a little bit and kind of forget about all the weight that I felt was on my shoulders. But it didn't become a crutch for me quite yet. But I did have the taste of alcohol. And that alcohol, with the both of us, led us into another world of using drugs. And we used together. And, I got to the point where I didn't want that life anymore, so I quit. And he couldn't, and he got really bad. It took everything. Took all of his money, took his home, took his wife, took everything. He just couldn't get out. Thank God he's alive today. He's remarried. He's been married for a long time. He's doing well, but still an alcoholic. Yeah. And so we ended up getting divorced, and I kept, just thinking that someday I was going to find somebody that loved me and that I loved, and that would want to take care of me and be with me for the rest of my life. So I hadn't given up on love yet. There was a time, let's see. There was a time that that I felt like if there was probably the only one time that I thought, well, if I wasn't here, everything would be okay. It was just a thought, and never had it again, but it was that bad. I ended up meeting a gentleman that had a heart disease. And within a short time of us dating, he ended up getting very sick and needing to be put on the transplant list, the heart transplant list. So we did that. And then before we could get his heart transplanted, we had been working on, and I worked in this field, so I was part of the team that does this. We've been working on doing implantations of artificial heart devices on people so that they could either bridge to a transplant, or they would have to live with this machine for, until they died, because it was their mechanical heart. And so we put him, his name was Eugene, we put Eugene on the artificial heart device, and he did extremely well. He was on it for 144 days, and then we got the call about the transplant. And I during all of this, I am a wreck. I am still drinking. I'm still doing drugs. I'm still, and I don't know how I kept my job there, but I was spiraling out of control. And he gets his heart and dies 6 months later from rejection. And he was only 39. So it was a really big deal to, because I thought we were going to fix him and then we're going to have a life together. That's what I thought. And God had a different plan, I guess. And so so after him, I kind of went on a wild, dark journey. And I didn't know how to pull myself out of it. But then I remembered my mom going to AA finally, and hearing some of the things that she said, I thought, this has got me. It's got me just like drinking got mom. I'm gonna have to do something about it. During my marriage to the first husband, I was put in a hospital in Albuquerque, New Mexico, because I had stopped eating. I had exercised all day long, every way I could, from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed, and got down to 76 pounds. When that happened, everybody was concerned. Everybody. Parents, people that knew me, the gym, everybody. People were talking about, I didn't know, were talking about me all the time, because I thought I looked great. I was skinny. They saw me as being nothing but poor health, just poor health. And plus I was muscular because I worked out all the time. So all I was just a bunch of muscle on bone. And so then my mom owed me some money, and about $1,000, and that's what I needed to get admitted into this place, but she wouldn't give it back. No matter what, she wouldn't give it back. So I had to go to the mayor's office and sit with him and talk to him about an indigent program. And he saw my side, he heard my story, and he said, we are gonna get you in that hospital. Later on, I found out that his daughter had died from anorexia. So he was very influential in getting me in there. And I stayed there about 3 months, and was very defiant at first. I was exercising in my room when I wasn't supposed to, and trying to hide food, and all the things that we do when we're in disease, all the lying, cheating, stealing. But I got out, and then I had an 8-week outpatient program there, and then I finally got to come home. When I discharged, they said they wanted us to go to a 12-step program, and they figured the best one for us people that had eating disorders would be to go to Overeaters Anonymous. Well, I was not going to go to Overeaters Anonymous. There was no way. I am not an overeater. I'm not over anything, I'm not fat anymore. I don't need to go to Overeaters Anonymous. I just really, really, really hated it that he had told me that. And then somebody told me, well, go to NA. you've used drugs before. It's just the same 12-step program. Go to NA. So I did that for a while, and I found a lot of relief and strength in not wanting to go back to that kind of lifestyle. I did notice that there was a lot of drugs going on within the NA, and I really didn't feel comfortable with that. So I kind of just started fading out, and it stopped going. But I did have a taste of it, and it's always been in the back of my mind, AA, NA, not OA. So, you know, and that was one of the reasons why my first husband and I couldn't make it, because he didn't support my eating disorder. He didn't know what it was. We tried to educate him, but he was the kind of person who's like, you just eat. Just eat. That's all you have to do, is just eat. Not exercise so much. You know, he just thought it was as simple as that. And it wasn't. It was deep ingrained in me, you know, and I had to get professional help. So here I am back at Kermit, and we've divorced, and I've done this whole black storm of things going on. And I decided that I was going to change jobs, and I did, and I started working in the ER, and life was pretty good. I can remember being pretty good there for a while. I wasn't dating again, so it was so nice when I wasn't dating. I don't know why I just kept not dating. Life was going really well. I was getting things back on track. I had graduated from nursing school. I had my first nursing job, early on, and then this new nursing job came about. And in walks another man that I ended up getting involved with. We ended up moving to the Houston area, and things were really, really good for a long time. But I got caught using at work, and so I had to go into a program for nurses, and it's a strict AA program, or 12-step program, and very monitored. And you were in it for 2 years. You had to comply with all their rules and regulations for 2 years. And I did that. And I was very involved in AA, and just really starting to understand what the Big Book was, and starting to understand some of my issues that I had that I didn't know about because I heard it in these rooms. I'd relate to somebody, and I was like, that's how I feel, or that's how I am, and started to feel a part of again, and also started to realize that there was things on me that I needed to work on. I ended up, Rusty and I stayed married for 10 years, and I was quite devastated when we got divorced because I had taken good care of him for all those 10 years, and his mother had said to me, "Why are you giving him back to me?" Because now it was time for Mom to take care of him again. Brilliant man, funny, but just didn't have any motivation to work at all. And I was carrying the whole load, but he was the boss, and it just, to me, it wasn't working well for me. But it wasn't working well for him either, because I was in AA, I was going places, I was doing things, I was becoming more outgoing and being involved, and he did not like that at all. And he left. So I ended up, right after that, getting custody of my dad. My dad had deteriorated real bad, and he came to live with me. And it was the neatest thing that I got to experience, taking care of Dad. I'm sorry, he's passed. And I got to spend a whole year taking care of him without working. I took a year off from work, And we moved to Arlington, and we had, Dad and I just had this, even though we fight, because when you're working with somebody who has dementia and mobility problems, they get very angry, and they'll take it out on the ones they love. So, but we got through it, and we learned a lot about each other, a lot. And I'm no longer mad at him. So we lived in Arlington for a while, and I was sober. I'm still working the program going. I had groups there in Arlington that I went to that I felt very comfortable in, and I'm still in contact with all those people because I was just, I had time. I had taken care of my dad, but I didn't have to go to work, so I had time to be really involved. But I only stayed there for like 9 months. And then Dad and I moved back to San Antonio. I had to put him in a nursing home because I had to go back to work. But the nursing home was a block from my house and it was across the street from my job. So I thought, oh, thank you, God. We set that up perfect. And everything looked really, really good. Work was going well. Dad was doing well. He was flourishing in the nursing home. I no longer felt guilty about that. I was, happy for him. I got involved with some people, and my sister came to live with me after getting out of prison. And things were going real well. We were doing AA together. We were, reading the big book together. Everything was AA or recovery for us. And I thought, the best thing for both of us, because she just got out of prison, she needs to get her life straight and to stay straight, and I did too. Unfortunately, that sister ended up stealing from me some valuable stuff that I had been looking for, and she had been helping me look for, and I found out when I kicked her out, that I found the receipts for all the stuff that she had hawked of mine that I had been searching for a year. And I was just so disappointed. And that's when I found out that she was getting close again. So our relationship fell apart a little bit. I mean, I still loved her as my sister, but I was just so devastated and crushed by the fact that she, after taking her in and supporting her and helping her, that she would steal from me. So she took off, and I started drinking. And I always started drinking, like, I think before she actually left. I don't know why, I just did it. It's kind of baffling and powerful. It just started happening again. And I was drinking, like, liquor now. Straight liquor, vodka in a glass, just anything. And I realized that soon on that I liked drinking to oblivion. The faster, the quicker, the better that I got to oblivion. And that's where I felt peace at. So I kept doing that, not regularly for a while, but I remembered, okay, this is a day that I don't really want to deal with. I'm going to go to oblivion. But then it became an everyday kind of thing. And then it became an issue where I kind of had to drink. So I backed off again. I don't know what strength I had to back off doing these crazy drugs and alcohol things that I was doing, but I backed off again. And this time I had lost another job and decided to go into rehab. And I went to my first rehab in San Antonio called the Alpha House. It was a great place. I really loved it and enjoyed being there. And again, learning more about the big book, learning more about alcoholism, learning more about myself, and all these things that I had missed or just ignored or didn't catch before, but I was really starting to hear the message. And I then moved up to El Paso after I got out of rehab and had a couple weeks or months or something there in San Antonio, and decided to move to El Paso with my boyfriend at the time. Was going to help me out and let me stay with him because I had a job here in El Paso. And so we kind of just went from boyfriend, girlfriend to roommate to significant others. He was sober. He used to come to this group. I thought life was going to be okay. You know, I have somebody to, now I have support for my not drinking, you know. Somebody that is in the same place I am at, and that we can learn from each other and help each other and do things together. And AA, I was really looking real forward to it until he started drinking. And that took me right back into drinking. And I started out drinking because I felt so guilty about drinking alcohol. I thought, well, I'll just drink mouthwash. That doesn't count, right? That doesn't count. Realized real quick that you get a pretty serious buzz on mouthwash if you drink enough of it. Later on, that became the only way that I could get through a day, was picking up a bottle of mouthwash so I could drink it while I was at work, because I had the shakes and so bad that I had to have something to calm my nerves. And I did that. I did that for a long time. I just, at that time, I just felt myself just falling down in a black hole again. It was getting worse. My thinking was getting worse. I was getting to the point where I couldn't control anything anymore. I was angry. And I still wanted to have that home, the nice home, the car, the job, and the person to love me. And I didn't know that I kept blaming it on everybody else, you know, the husbands, boyfriends, or whatever. But I hadn't truly looked at my part, you know, what I was doing. Fast forward to these last 4 years, I have learned so much about myself. I know what my triggers are. I know what where I need to keep my mouth shut, and that is a very difficult thing for me to do, to keep my mouth shut. And you know, I still have to work on it, or I just get real angry and frustrated real quick, you know. And I'm really working on that. This time around, when a fellow AAer that used to come here, that's gone now from the disease, came to my house, brought me a beer, picked me up, brought me to a new meeting. It had been a couple of years since I had been back in this room. And I was so ashamed. I cried, right now. I cried, and I just felt so guilty and so ashamed. But I kept coming back, and I realized that there was a meeting at 6:45 in the morning, and I'm an early person. I like getting up early. Every job I've ever had was early, so I have tried early birds in the morning, and that's where I met my home group. And the lessons that each one of you guys have taught me have been so valuable. My sponsor taught me about acceptance. You know, I didn't ever think that, you know, that I could accept something the way it was, or I could get it out. It's one way or the other. Either accept it, it's gonna be like that, or get out. And I'm tired of running. So I learned how to accept a few things. And it made things a lot easier. And now, when I'm in acceptance, I know where I'm at when I get there, and I can feel it, that I'm in acceptance. And I can genuinely let it guide me to the next step of whatever I'm supposed to do, as long as I have God on my side. And I've always had a spiritual connection with God. It just got unplugged during the bad time. I went to church as a kid. I went to church as an adult. I didn't have this fire and brimstone kind of God in my mind, but he was like my father. I always wanted to please. So even lying, I would be like, he's gonna strike me down because he knows I'm lying, But I found out that my God doesn't act like that. He's forgiving and he's understanding. I have, in this last 4 years, finally gained self-respect. I made a big amends to my mom. She was dead. She's dead too. They're all gone. I only have one person left. And I can remember going to her graveside, reading my 10-page letter, whatever, that I had written out, and taking my part in the relationship and apologizing for my part. Because I really never gave her a chance. I thought they were supposed to take care of me, and I wasn't supposed to do anything. I was supposed to be just taken care of, I guess, And my mom and I had a lot of dark, deep wounds. But on that day, writing that letter, sitting at her grave, reading it out loud, and then turning around and burning it, gave me the best freedom that I had ever felt. And I miss my mom. I miss her dearly. She's been gone for a long time. But she did die sober 12 years. So I was very proud of her for that. Where I'm at now is I've learned to become a sponsor. And I really was afraid of getting up and sponsoring another person because, I'm still in the back of my head and in my heart, I still have that striving for perfection going on. And I didn't want to disappoint anybody. But I soon found out that being a sponsor is more about teaching myself a whole lot of stuff while I'm working with others. It's, listening to somebody's story and then relating back to it yourself is not only easy for both people to feel comfortable with, but it gives you a lot of hope. It's like, you're like me, you're like me, you're like me. We can do this together. I see you doing better. I see you doing better. I see me doing better. We just keep working towards, honesty and service and putting God number one in your life. I attend AA meetings daily. I do the Zoom online because I'm getting ready for work and traveling to work while our meeting is on. And, during COVID, I was kind of new at sobriety when COVID hit, and I latched on to the Zoom meetings and have never left because it became my secondary home group because I was there every day, and I'm very involved in that group. And this last year, I besides sponsorship, I've volunteered for service. I have volunteered for projects. When somebody needs me, or they say they need me, or can you come, I try to do that often as I can. I'm a better friend, and I'm a better neighbor, and I am much a better AA'er than I used to be. The last little part of my story, one of the things that I noticed through all my attempts and trials of AA or NA or OA, that I was not being completely honest, because I was so afraid that if anybody knew, that would do me in. But it wasn't. It wasn't. It was just the beginning. And, you know, and I had to look at myself honestly to say, you know, you need some help. You know, not just AAs and save you. You need other help. And I went and got me a psychiatrist, and I got me a therapist, and we got on the right medication. All this time that I was doing speed back in the day, and I was just saying how well I functioned with it, I found out in my 50s that I have ADHD. I always wondered why I couldn't complete things, and why I couldn't sit still, and why I was always doing something. And school was like that. I had to concentrate. I did great in school, but it was at the cost of working really hard at it, because I wasn't just naturally smart. I had to really work at it. And that speed helped me concentrate, you know. So when the doctor diagnosed me with ADHD, it totally made sense of why I was behaving like I did, and why I enjoyed that type of drug so much, because it would calm my brain down. It would do the opposite. I wouldn't get all Speedy Gonzalez. I would just be able to calm down. And you know, I've been on this medication now for my mental health and for my ADHD for a couple of years now. And it really, really has changed a lot of the ways that I think. I love more than I've ever loved before. It's a different love. It's an unconditional love. For so many years, I always had conditions of, if I'm going to love you, then you have to do this, or you have to do that. And I don't feel that way in these rooms. It's unconditional love. And so it's taught me how to give unconditional love. And I think it's improved my life tenfold just from that. But I can tell you, if you are struggling, I had to finally, 4 years ago, hit my knees for real, and I begged God to please take away the obsession and the compulsion to drink, because I could not deal with the feelings that I had when I was drinking. It was awful. I say I had pterodactyls in my stomach all the time. I was a nervous wreck. I wasn't functioning well. And, you know, it's been a whole different story this last 4 years. I am married again. This will be my last time. I'm getting too old for this shit. But you know, I have a husband that is a practicing alcoholic. It's sometimes difficult seeing him get drunk And he's not a bad drunk most of the time, but when he drinks excessively, he becomes very much a different person. And like I said, it doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's very painful. And that's where my sponsor, taught me about acceptance, and that's where my sponsor also told me that, everything that is being said to you right now doesn't count because he's drinking. You just have to let it roll off. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But I know that I'm safe and that I have all of you guys, and I'm not afraid. I'm not, if he happens to get out of the marriage because I'm sober, then that's his problem. If I don't have the kind of job that he thinks that I should have, and he wants to leave, that's okay. I want him to be happy. And that's something that I didn't always feel. I liked people being miserable, because I was miserable. But I'm the happiest I've ever been. I have a beautiful home. I have a nice car. I have a good job that I like. It's not great. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but it's part-time. It's out of the hospital. It's helping individuals that have IDD or mental retardation and other psychological issues, and I love working with them. I love taking care of them. I don't want to give up the job. I don't make great money anymore, and that bothers my husband, but I'm happy. I'm happy with the times that I go in, the times that I get off. I have my own office. I never had that nursing. I was always running, 12-hour shifts, the whole night, days on end, and just working so hard and being so tired all the time. I don't want to be like that, because when I get tired and I get lonely and I get stressed, that magic elixir starts popping up in your mind to take it away. And I have to stop that thought before it even gets in my head. And that's what I do. I pray to God all day long. I haven't had, not once yet, have I had a compulsion or desire to drink. God has relieved that from me. I have alcohol in my house all the time. Lots of alcohol. And I don't even know it's there. It's out in the garage refrigerator, so I don't have to go out there very often. Like I said, my husband's a daily drinker, but I don't even see it. God has removed that completely away from me, thank God, so that I could work on other things. Now I want him to work on my anger and my need to be right. But I'm working on it. And through this program, I'll get there. This program has taught me so much. AA has given me back my life. It's my first priority. I'm not embarrassed about it at all. I no longer have any shame or guilt. I've let go of all the bad things that I've done and forgiven myself. And that's through working the steps. And if anybody's struggling, my first sponsor in the Houston area was this woman that had this British accent. She sounded lovely. In fact, the first meeting I went to there was a British lady, there was an Irish man, and there was a Scottish man. And they were all talking, and I kind of looked around to see if I was in the right place. Maybe I was in a foreign meeting or something. But I liked her so much, and she was such a lady. Just such a lady. And I wanted to be a lady. So I picked her as my sponsor because I wanted what she had. And she was a fabulous sponsor, and we did a lot of good work together. Unfortunately, while I was sober, after 12 years of sobriety, she went out and drank, and then she died. And those are the stories that we hear in here when we go back out. I'm just lucky that the times that I went back out didn't kill me. Went to jail, did that too. I got a DWI, and I'll always regret that. But I've served my time and I've done the deed. And I don't drink and drive anymore, so I don't think that's gonna happen again. I feel like, other than the squabbles that my husband and I have, I feel like I have the kind of life that I would have been looking for a long time. I'm very content. I couldn't ask for anything more. Because I don't feel like I need anything more. I just want to keep growing and keep learning and keep being happy and bring joy to others and bring love to others and help people and be a part of something bigger than myself. But I couldn't do it without all of you, and I couldn't have done it without AA, and I couldn't have done it without my sponsor and my friends. It's been a long journey. I've had some types of addiction since I was a little girl, basically. Starting out with an eating disorder. And when you look at it all is the same, different kind of drug or a different kind of ingestion, but it all points to the same thing. The lost black hole that we're trying to fill. And I have a little black hole left, I'm sure, but I try to fill it with happiness, love, joy. And every morning I get up and I look for something positive, some little morning greeting, something positive for somebody else to read. And I send them to about 35 people every day, every single time. And it gives me great joy because I have heard people say that this is what I just needed to hear today, or thank you, that helped me. And those kind of things, they put a smile on my face when I can touch somebody like that, because people have touched me like that. And I'm just really pleased to be a part of AA and part of this phenomenal path that we are on. God has given me everything I needed and everything I wanted. And I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, so I keep getting what I'm getting. And that's all I can say about that.